Good evening, good afternoon. I am Cec Koontz. I go by Cease, and I am honored to serve as the mayor of Monmouth. Your city council has many responsibilities, and probably the most important is that we are currently undertaking to hire the next city manager, the chief executive who will lead this amazing city in their work for you. We are pleased to introduce to you today the two finalists who we feel are qualified to lead Monmouth into the 2020s. Now, typically, we would invite finalists to a public meet and greet, giving all of our staff, our volunteers, our businesses and local partners and community members a chance to get to know them a little better. Of course, these are not typical times. Thanks to our strong partnership with Western Oregon University and the support of President Rex Fuller, we are happy to provide this opportunity to give you a chance to virtually meet our candidates, Steve Dahl and Marty Wine. I'd like to thank Deborah Rozelle and WouTV for broadcasting. This is live. There will also be a taped version available. And we have two wonderful sign language interpreters with us today, as well as a live captioning service. This broadcast will be available on the WouTV website for future viewing. So with that, and with thanks to my council president, Darren Silbernagel, who is here with us today, and the support of our city staff, I would like to introduce our first candidate, Steve Dahl. Steve has been the city administrator for the city of Drain, Oregon, since 2017. Prior to that, he was the city manager in the city of Phoenix for almost 3 years. His experience before that was in economic development, both as the development coordinator for the city of Grants Pass and also in Grant County, Oregon. So he's been around the east side and southern Oregon. Steve has also served as the president and board member for the Oregon Economic Development Association from 2008 to 2013. He has a master's degree in management from the Atkinson Graduate School of Management at Willamette University after receiving his bachelor's degree there in music. Steve, welcome to Monmouth.
Oh, thank you. It's a pleasure to be here.
So I read your professional bio for our audience. What else do we need to know about your background?
Well, one thing to know is my dad was in the Forest Service, and so I grew up moving every 2 or 3 years from different locations around the state and into different states. I've lived in 5 states, Oregon, Washington, Virginia, Utah, Colorado, and spent a couple summers in New Mexico working as a landing man for a logging crew. That's where I really learned how to swear effectively.
So, what do you know about the history and culture of Monmouth?
Well, I know the history in the sense it was a dry community for the longest time, and when I went to Willamette, I knew some people who went to Western Oregon, and they complained about that constantly, that direction. It is actually there were 3 things I really looked at when I was looking at coming to Monmouth to work here. One was Western Oregon University. To have Monmouth have Western Oregon University is a fantastic thing for the community, and it's great for economic development and great for everything you can do within there, culturally, art-wise. It's an asset that in other communities I've worked at that had community colleges or universities were not taken advantage of as the most that you could do. And so to have the opportunity to work with a university like that, I think is a fantastic thing. I really enjoy that possibility. Second thing is you have your own electric utility. I mean, I can't tell you how important that is to the future of Monmouth, to have your own electric utility. It is I don't want to say cash cow because that implies you're gouging on rates, but you're not. Actually, you're cheaper than a lot of places around here.
We are.
And so that's an important thing to know on that direction. And the third thing is, this is a gorgeous area. I mean, you have a history with, agriculture and working with agriculture and going in and out with that direction, and that's a benefit to the community that you can't underestimate, undervalue. Sorry, I'm speaking too fast now.
Okay.
And those are the three things I looked at. And it's like, hey, Monmouth would be a fantastic place to be, and again, having the opportunity to be here and talk to you and to break everyone's television set is I think an important thing.
Yeah, thanks. I'm hoping we get very few viewers as well. This isn't exactly my comfort zone either. I have done theater before, so I'm used to being there, but I can't see anybody. So
Actually, my one connection to Western Oregon, besides the friends and people I knew when I was in school, is I got the opportunity to play on stage with Dizzy Gillespie.
Oh.
And this was back in 87 or 88, I can't remember exactly year. But but Western Oregon University was also the split. We both did a concert where Western Oregon Jazz Band, which is a great jazz band, has a great jazz program,
right.
Played half of it, and we played, and the Willamette University Jazz Band played half of it. And I'm telling you, that was a night I'll never forget. It was actually, fantastic to be on stage and watching. And what really came across more than anything else, working with, the night before with Dizzy and all the process, is how much love and passion he has for his music.
Yes.
And, I just wish I had that passion for everything in my whole life that way, because the detail and the passion he had for it is, unless you're on stage getting chewed out by him, it's hard to imagine, wait a minute, you missed that note. It's like, yeah, sorry, I'll get it next time.
Yeah. The Smith Fine Arts Series, which still brings world-class musicians to this campus every year, is a huge asset. It is so fun to be able to just say, oh yeah, 15 minutes before curtain, gotta get in a car to get over there. But we have had, it's been amazing to get to see Aaron Neville and Alan Toussaint. I'm thinking there are a lot of great jazz musicians who've been through here. And as you say, the music program is very strong, but we have dance, we have bluegrass, we've had world music, just some fantastic opportunities, and people don't exactly know. It is a total hidden gem.
Oh, it's fantastic to have that opportunity, and you wouldn't have it without Western Oregon University.
That's right, yeah.
And again, that's the benefit to Monmouth, to have that culture and the art that is associated with it. It's exciting to see. And have the opportunity to be a part of that, and help that, and maybe get more communication between Western Oregon and the city of Monmouth, is exciting to me.
Yeah. So you've lived in some pretty small towns, or you've worked in some pretty small towns. What do you like about a small town?
No traffic lights is one thing. So I was driving up here today, I'm getting stuck behind traffic lights. I was wondering, I could really go without any traffic lights in my community anymore. No, actually, there is a lot of small towns have a sense of community. They have a sense of identity that you don't have in Portland or Beaverton, and you have so many people coming and going. But it's also almost a strike, because if you try to do something new, everyone's like, well, we tried that 5 years ago or 15 years ago, and it's just like, well, maybe we're not ready then, but maybe we are now. And what I'm seeing, actually, in a lot of small towns I've been in recently, is there has been a lot of change within those small towns. Because Oregon is an ingress state, you're having more people come to live in Oregon than you have, leaving Oregon.
Okay.
They have to go somewhere, and Portland Metro is pretty much packed up. It's like I was talking to Cedcor, the president of Cedcor, recently. They're almost out of industrial land up there. And finding industrial land to move into, or new land to put in houses, and it's a difficult thing, because Oregon's land use law is unique in the country, and there's a lot of issues associated with it, which we can go into if you want to, but I think we put more people to sleep. But so there's whether you're going to expand is going to be into the communities. And what you're beginning to see actually now with the millennials is they're beginning to say, okay, I'm now 30 years old. I want a place to call my own. I have kids now. I need to start developing a set of family rules and values. And so they're coming to the small towns and leaving. And what you have an opportunity here where you have you're an hour away from Portland, you're 30 minutes from Salem. That's where the jobs are going to be. And so Monmouth is going to be the community where they're going to call home, where they want to be, where they care about the schools, where they want to be involved in that. So it's going to be an important place to do work, to have that opportunity there. And that's again what Monmouth can offer in that direction.
Yeah. So what are the drawbacks of the small town life?
Everyone knows your name. When I first started working in economic development in Grant County, I figured out that you never go shopping at 1 o'clock in the afternoon on a Saturday. Because if you go shopping at 1 o'clock in the afternoon on a Saturday, it will take you 3.5 hours to get through a grocery store. And so, I began to, now sometimes that's great and actually use it to my advantage in the sense that if I needed to know, like I was in Grants Pass, the only Starbucks at that time was in the Safeway store. So I'd go sit in the Safeway store Starbucks and wait until the people I needed to have come talk to me,
Right.
Come in and, so I'd sat there and drink my hot chocolate and, just waited for people to show up, and usually they did. So that's but the bad thing is like everyone knows your business. I mean, I had like when I was in Phoenix, I got a new dog. The whole community knew I got a new dog. In 5 minutes, and they were like, I had people coming in and saying, I want to see your pug. So the fact that you have any sense of privacy or anything like that that's just you. A lot of times in small communities, you have a lot of family get together, the people
Right.
who are active are from different families. So you have 1 or 2 families that have a long history together. And as a new guy coming into a community, sometimes you don't understand the long history of that. And so there's a couple times I've just totally blown it because, I didn't know so-and-so was related to so-and-so, and all of a sudden, not that I say anything bad, but it was like, well, what do you mean you're not doing this? Like, you told my sister this. It's like, who's your sister? I mean,
Right.
You have that part, that is probably the least favorite part I have with a
Right.
small town.
It's always hard too when you are new to a small town, because even if you have lived here 10 years, you're new, right? It takes a long time before somebody is considered to be an old timer in a small town sometimes.
Oh, yeah, when I was in, John Day area, in Grant County, after I'd been there 2 years, my comment was, 20 more years, I'll be a local.
Uh-huh. That's about
And
right.
so,
Yeah.
it's kind of how it works out, and that's what you need to have with that.
And we have a little bit different dynamic because of the university, and we get a lot of folks who do move in and become a part of the community. It's funny, I also had friends that went here to college. I grew up in Salem, so I had a lot of friends here. And then I started dating a high school teacher here. So I became a big part of the community. I was involved in his activities, involved with a lot of families. So I knew the parents, I knew the children. But really, I'd only moved here about 15 years ago, 12 years ago actually. So it was very funny because I didn't think about, I knew so many people and I'd worked here in town. But you do, it takes a while before you really get to count yourself, right, as a local. And so, Steve, I think looking at your bio, you'd been involved in Rotary in your previous community, and that, first of all, kind of breaks the stereotype that Rotary is a bunch of old retired guys, right? That's something people think of a lot with service clubs. But what draws you to Rotary, and what would you say to other people that should get involved with some of our service clubs?
Well, one of Rotary's ideas is service above self. And I like the idea of helping the community and getting the community involved in a lot of different things and a lot of help with the community. I was involved in the Grants Pass Rotary. The last 2 communities I worked in did not have Rotary, did not have service clubs.
A little smaller.
And I felt that it was a detriment to the community because you didn't have a way for some people to work in the community or help the community out, because having that formal organization helps set the goals, helps set things doing. And so you don't end up having a lot of people trying to do the same thing or trying to do different ways of something. So you have like a couple groups that say, well, this is kind of where our goals are, this is what we can help out, this is where we can do it. Chamber of Commerce is also great in that direction. I worked a lot with the Chamber of Commerce. In fact, in Grants Pass, one of the things I started with them is I gave them money to do quarterly how to do business seminars. And there's a lot of great companies down in Southern Oregon. Dutch Brothers is one, Nice Badge is another, and they each have special things they do. Like with Dutch Brothers, I had them come in with the help of the Chamber of Commerce and give an hour presentation on how to market.
Oh.
And so what's really beneficial with those type of things is these aren't strangers into the community. This isn't someone coming out of the community and saying, you need to do this to be successful. Yeah. This is the community that born, raised there, and says, I can do it, you can do it. Yeah. And so that was the important part. But that was, let me see, I think 2011, 2012, and they're still doing it. Huh. So and again, one of those things that you look back and say, hey, I'm really happy I had a hand in this, and this is where you can do it. Yeah. And again, when you're talking about economic development and growth of businesses, a majority of all new jobs are created by startups. And how to help startups become successful is an important part of looking at things. And actually, where I got the idea from was North Carolina. Oh. And the triangle there. Yeah. For those who don't know, triangle is you have NC State, you have North Carolina, and you have Duke. All within a 30-mile radius, or a really short.
Our former chamber director's from North Carolina, so a lot of us know about North Carolina.
Okay, sorry if I'm.
No, she's.
Don't mean to mansplain anything to anybody. Don't mean to do that. But,
she's retired now, but we've all heard. Yeah. So.
But anyway, what they started doing there is with college students and startup businesses is getting them together for Beer Fridays. Yeah. And so just having the casual interaction and conference, and that really helped build the knowledge level of the community on what to do and how to develop businesses and what you need to do and what you need to think about, or when you want to do funding, or all these, even how to deal with an employee. Yeah. Because a lot of these entrepreneurs, they start up, they have this great idea, they're being successful, and all of a sudden they have an employee and they have no idea what to do with them. Sure. And so those are the type of things that were kind of fun to do. But that's what they started, and that's where I got the idea from. And that's when you have a lot of the around here. You have the pub talks and different things that direction, and it's good to see because again, community is about sharing and communicating. And when you can have the ability to share and communicate, it becomes a very successful community. You begin to develop a real identity for that community. And if you don't have places, again, you just finished your master's parks plan, and I was glad to see that because parks are an extremely important part of it. When they took me around today, they said, oh, this is a dog park. And it's like, hey, that's an important thing in the community. How many people are you going to have communicate? You don't know the name, you know the name of the dog, but you don't know their name, but you see them every day. Right. And, it's an important part of the community because that's how you make connections. That's how you stop isolation, which is, I think, one of the bigger issues you're facing in the United States nowadays, is by having an opportunity to go walk in the park, to see people on a regular basis, to have someone come pet your dog. As I said, I have a pug, and I came up here a couple weeks ago to walk around and get a feeling of the community. So I was walking around with my pug, and 12 people said, "Can I pet your pug?" Well, of course you can pet my pug. I mean, she doesn't actually like to walk. She actually just wants to go around and have people pet her. Yeah. So that's but that's, again, you're bringing a sense and develop a sense of community when you have that. And that's why, again, parks are important and, working in that direction. I think you have a good park system. I love the fact that you have a couple of really good pocket parks in the area, again, where kids can go by themselves and play. Right. And, that's a unique thing for a small town, and it's a great thing for a small town. And, you don't get that when you're living in Medford or you're living in Portland or Salem or something like that, because people begin to freak out.
Yeah, yeah. So, in the Rotary world, and I imagine you've been involved in some other nonprofits. And of course, we have nonprofits that are vital to provide services in our community. We don't have a lot of those things. And we share a lot of those nonprofits. So getting folks engaged is really important. And we do have a Rotary, and we also have a Lions Club here in town. So we've got, as you say, those folks are providing, doing amazing work.
Yeah.
Not only with Rotary, we've got foreign exchange students, of course, that they're very active in that, but just the different things that go on. And so, yeah, very important to support those. And our city staff, a lot of folks do join those clubs because it is a way to get out there and get to know people. So my next question, you've answered one of these already. So I was going to mention Monmouth has 8 departments, and several of those are actually supported in their work by boards and commissions. So we have volunteers who worked on that park master plan you just mentioned. And that was an intense amount of work, obviously, for a very long time. Oregon is required to have planning processes and systems, and there's volunteer input for that. And then some of our organizations or our departments actually have a full-on nonprofit that does support their work as well and do fundraising for them. So I was going to mention each of these departments, and I want to hear kind of what you think about them. What are the phrases that come to mind? You've really explained parks, what the importance of parks is. So I want to hear your thought about libraries.
Libraries are essential. Grants Pass had just shut down their library when I moved down there. And Douglas County had just shut down their libraries. And I'm like, if you don't have libraries, kids don't have the opportunity to dream or see different locations or see what life can be like in somewhere else. And you can get stuck into the only thing they know is what they see every day. And sometimes it's not that fun to see. Again, I work in Drain. It's a good community. It's a strong community. But again, it has some economic issues. Let's put it that way. And so so the only place the kids can go after school is a library.
Yeah.
And to be able to read a book, to be able to do that, and to be able to get online. Again, I remember in Grants Pass, someone said, "We don't need libraries anymore. We have online stuff." Well, not everyone can afford to be online. Not everyone can afford the computer, and they can go at the library and be able to look that up and get that information and do that. And it's a great thing to do that. This is, sorry if I'm in Grand Gazette, but in Grants Pass, one of my hobbies is collecting original cartoon art.
Oh.
And so I worked with the museum down in Grants Pass to put on a collection of original art. We're talking, Dunes, not the Dunes area, but in Bloom County, Gasoline Alley. I have a 1932 Blondie cartoon that's probably the highest one in that direction, and a bunch of other different things. Also had Broomhilda, because the guy who draws Broomhilda is from Grants Pass.
Yeah.
And so I worked with him. He actually did a great thing for me where he went from the beginning of an idea of a cartoon to the finished product. And so then I had a copy of it, how it was showed in the local paper there. And so anyway, we did a whole retrospective on him too on that direction. But let me get back to the point. I was able to work with the library because I had also a bunch of cartoon collections. And so we were able to get some bookshelves and some, beanbag chairs from the library and put them all up there. And so kids were able to come up and see this wonderful cartoon art, original, and then they were able to sit down and read books and stuff like that with that direction. And so when the thing was over, I gave all the books to the library, and they were very happy to have them. But again, it made a difference to the kids. It made a difference to the people. Because again, if you don't have that opportunity to see something different, to be able to go read the books. As a kid, I remember going to the Pendleton Library because I lived in Eastern Oregon at the time, and being able to check out a collection of Peanuts. And I would spend hours reading that Peanuts collection. So, again, libraries are important. They're also, you can make the argument, besides the water, sewer, and electric department you have here, it's the most important department you have in the city. I mean, okay, maybe I'm over-grandizing it, but, you know, that's kind of how I think of it. And it's very important to have that, especially in a smaller community.
Yeah, yeah. I am partial to, obviously, to not only our city library, which, interestingly enough, has one of the highest per capita circulation rates in the state of Oregon. So very well used and well loved library. Of course, we're part of a regional library system. But at the school district where I work, I also work with our library assistants in each of our schools. And so that is extremely important to all of us in this community. So that's great. So you mentioned Public Works, also an important department. So tell us a little bit about your experience or your interest in Public Works and how that supports our community.
Well, Public Works is your backbone of your community. I mean, if without Public Works, your water doesn't work, your sewer doesn't work. Your roads are, that you have flooding all over the place because you don't have a storm water plan, that direction. So, I mean, to me, when you're talking about Public Works, you're talking about the true essence of what a community needs to offer. Because if you don't have, water, sewer, and, storm drains and stuff like that, then you pretty much, why do you have the community?
Right.
Why call yourself a city if you don't provide those type of services? And also, quite frankly, if you don't have them, you can't run a city off what you pay in property taxes.
Right.
It's like I tell people in Drain that come in and say, our water bill is too high, or, something like that. I'm going like, yeah, I wish I could do it better, but, we receive $90,000 from property taxes a year. I mean, you receive a lot more, you're a lot bigger community. I'm not, but, we receive $350,000 a year in water.
Wow.
And about $400,000 a year in sewer.
Yeah.
And so, just to finish it off, we have an electric utility in Drain too.
Oh, right.
We receive 1.4 million in sales for electricity in that direction. Without those services and that income coming in, you wouldn't have a city. You couldn't afford to have anybody. You couldn't even afford, a part-time person hardly with the requirements you have nowadays. So, when I talk about Public Works, you're talking about the backbone of the community, what is set up for the community to serve. And it's great. I mean, and, okay, I don't have anything else on that one.
Yeah, it's the not sexy part of the city that we spend a lot of our time dealing with as a community, because it is. If it wasn't there under the roads, then,
There was a study I read back in, I think, 2006, 2007. I wish I would have cut it out, but because I don't remember the exact numbers. But people were asked, how much would you pay every time to turn on your water?
Yeah.
How much would you pay every time to flush your toilet? Or flip on the lights, or, however you want to describe it in that direction. And it was about half of what it actually cost.
Yeah.
And people don't understand how much it actually costs to put in that road. You put in, we did a half a mile of road in Drain 2 years ago, and the cost was about $280,000.
Oh, wow, yeah.
And that was, just, digging it up and putting new asphalt in and working that. So, I mean, it's expensive to have roads. It's expensive to do those type of things.
Sure.
And, but if you don't have them, you don't have a city.
Yeah. You mentioned Power and Light, that we do have our own electric utility, as Drain does, and you mentioned that you see that as a huge advantage.
Very much so.
You're absolutely right. Our rates are much lower. It's very clear to me. I'm the finance director for the school district, and I have buildings on Monmouth Power and Light, and I have buildings on Pacific Power. And I can tell you which of my buildings I'd rather pay the bills for every day. So I really appreciate that. I especially appreciate the fact that our high school is in Independence, but is on Monmouth Power. So anything else about Power and Light? Well, you say that's really a driver for us, an opportunity.
Well, it's also an opportunity is, because you have MinNet and also you have the power, if you are looking for businesses to come into the community, those are two big selling points you can have. You're not going to get necessarily, Facebook or anyone to come in and do any of that stuff. There's a whole bunch of reasons for that. But being able to sit there and say, hey, we have the cheapest power in the area, and that will, for some companies, that's a huge thing to bring in.
Right.
We have, relative to California, we have cheap water. So if you're going to recruit businesses to the community, if you're going to recruit different actions in the community or help businesses grow, those are stepping stones that you can have that are cost efficient to have people and encourage people to move into Monmouth.
Yeah.
And so again, and you can make your own deals with them versus having to go to
Right.
that. And I'm not saying you'd want to or give anyone special treatment per se, but if someone's coming in with 100 jobs, if they want a half a cent cheaper on electricity, I think we could probably afford it. But that's just my personal opinion.
Well,
But,
and if nothing else, getting the electricity to them. You've got a guy, like you're talking to your guy who lives right there in town, who's helping you get
Yeah.
that power to you. We're pretty proud of our police departments. So
Okay.
Drain may not have its own police.
Drain does not have its police department. We work with the sheriff's office on
Right.
that.
But you've had experience working with police and.
Oh yeah, I talk to the sergeant in charge of the district, Jane Drissick, once or twice a week, sometimes depending on what goes on. They made a couple arrests the other day, and people were calling me on the phone. It's like, what happened over here? It's like, I just can't get into that part of it. But no, I've worked with the police a lot. I worked actually in Phoenix. We had our own police department in Phoenix. And that was an interesting experience. I made sure I rode with each of the police officers and got to an understanding of what they worked on, what their concerns were, what they liked about being a police officer in Phoenix, what they didn't like, and how to improve that. And so that helped me when we actually got to the negotiation table when I had to negotiate a new contract with them. This is like the first month or so I was in Phoenix, and the police union president was like, "I don't trust your numbers," and got up and did a whole big song and dance, and was like, I'm sitting there going like, okay, then we'll call off this meeting. You and I will go and talk to our financial chief
Right.
executive, and we will explain everything to you, where the money comes from, how it is spent, what we're required to do with it. Because a lot of people don't understand when you're actually doing public accounting,
Right.
that when you get money from your
Sewer.
electric company,
Yeah, right.
water, sewer, it has to stay within that organization except for like a franchise fee.
Right.
And so, again, going back to Drain, where we, our sales of electricity is 1.4 million a year, we only get to take,
You can't spend that on
6%
police.
off of that
Right.
to, bring into the general fund. And so it's a tough thing to balance those two things with it. But going back, but that was part of the problem with the negotiating with the police officer. He saw all this money coming in
Right.
from our water and sewer department, and it's like, okay, that we can get part of that. It's like, no, all I have to give you is from the general fund and from this.
And with 90,000 in property tax.
That's actually
That's
Phoenix is a
great.
little bit
Yeah,
more
yeah,
in
Phoenix
property
is
tax,
bigger.
but it was still a limited amount compared to what they're doing. And but no, we had a great thing. I worked hard in Phoenix to actually encourage the police chief, and he finally did it just after I got fired. Was hiring someone who spoke Spanish because it was a big Spanish-speaking community.
yeah.
And personally, I was looking for a female police officer, and so. We found one. We found someone who was interested. It was a female Spanish-speaking police officer.
Wow.
We sent her to the academy, and the minute she graduated from the academy, the city of Medford came in and said,
Right.
"Hey, listen, can we offer you 20,000 more than Drain can?" And I'm like, "I hate you right now, Medford."
Right, exactly, yeah. That's those people, it would be very hard to keep in a small town.
Oh,
right?
yeah, no, it's
Yeah.
it's a luxury to have that. But again, you need to make sure when you're talking about the police officers and police force and stuff like that direction, that you have some sense of diversity
Yeah.
on there. And again, in Monmouth, you do have a population that speaks Spanish, and you need to make sure that you have people on the police force who speak Spanish, who understand the Spanish culture in relation to the United States and everything in that direction, because you want that diversity, you want that thought, out there.
Yeah.
And that, for most of the part, in Drain, I work with the sheriff's office and have a good working relationship with them.
That's great.
And I listen to what they need.
Yeah. We are also fortunate because Western has a criminal justice program. So we have some tremendous opportunity to connect with not only experts in that field, but also young graduates.
Important.
Very convenient, yeah. Community development, and I suppose in most cities, and certainly of our size, there's a lot in our community development departments. So what do you know about them?
In a lot of ways, community development is a two-edged sword because it's one of the few departments that actually have rules and regulations you have to follow. And a lot of those rules and regulations are not necessarily locally grown, they're state requirements. And, so you're sitting there talking to somebody, especially if someone from out of the state of Oregon comes in and wants to build a house, build a business, something like that. They don't really understand the rules and regulations that the state of Oregon requires. And so there's been a lot of times when I was doing economic development, I talked to a business about moving into Grants Pass or that area, and they say, well, okay, can I get started, construction in 30 days? It's like, no. And, they're like, why not? I can do this in, so there's different ways to approach it. But again, you're asking the people in the community development office to, enforce the rules and also play in some ways judge and jury with it, because you have a whole planning process, which includes, people on the planning department, planning,
Commission.
commission, thank you. I forgot that C word.
Right, yeah.
In that direction. And so there's a song and dance that has to go through with it, for lack of a better term.
Sure. No.
But yeah, no, it's one of the reasons, your house values are so high in Oregon,
Yeah.
especially around here. If you go, let's make a comparison to Nevada real quick, where you had a lot of flat land, a lot of stuff and you could go put up a house really quickly, and that house is worth $30,000, and 10 years from now, the house is worth $30,000. Because of the land use laws you have in Oregon, and their real desire to keep agriculture, and the whole process in that direction, you're in some ways forcing the people to live in cities, which was the thought process behind it, and you can actually, so you're seeing higher, more dense population growth. Like when I was being shown around Monmouth today, one of the people was showing up, and this used to be a house, and now it's a duplex, and this used to be a house, and now it's a triplex, and this used to be two houses, and now it's a small apartment building.
Right.
But that's the goal of the playing is that, because you can drive 2 minutes out of town, and you can see all these fields of beautiful and the sky and everything in that direction. And if you lived in Nevada, you'd be trying to drive out of town, and you'd be driving for 15 minutes, and you see the same houses over and over again.
Yeah, it's not just houses; it's the same houses.
So again, it's a blessing because it keeps your house values high. It keeps the density in the communities there, so you have outdoor places to go into.
Yeah.
But it's a cost because it's making buying your first home almost next to impossible. And heaven forbid you want to move to Salem or Portland and buy a home there. It's almost as bad as the Silicon Valley area almost nowadays. I had a friend who lived in Silicon Valley, sold his home, a modest 3-bedroom ranch, and moved to Grants Pass and bought a house that was huge. And 6 acres of land, and still had he still had about $1 million left to put in the bank.
Right.
I mean, so it's just like I mean, it's a crazy little system, and but it's an important part of that. And the important part is actually to have a person who works in your planning department who cares about other people, who's willing to sit down and explain the rules.
Right. Yeah.
And that's the biggest, and again, I'm assuming you guys, because you have good staff, I've heard nothing but
Fabulous
positive,
staff,
the people I've talked to, positive parts about your staff here. So, that to me, that's an exciting thing to do. And to be able to, make sure that, it's like I explained to the person one time, if you own your own business and you're coming into the planning department, you are used to being in charge. And all of a sudden, you're in a situation where you're not in charge anymore, and you don't know what the rules are, and you don't know what's going on. And so, to have someone sit down and explain, this is what we're looking for, this is what we need to do, this is what we have to have that direction, is really important.
Yeah.
So they can feel they can share and do stuff like that. And so, instead of someone comes in, it's like, this is what I'd like to do, and the answer is no.
Right. No,
Yeah. Explain why. Okay. This is what we like to do, but this is what we have to look through. So we'll try to get it to that point, but we need to make sure that we're doing, the customer service aspect of it, explaining what needs to be done, explaining things, and no matter what, sometimes you'll just get people who are upset at you, and I'll sit there and explain to them again, no, we don't have a lot of choice in the matter. This is what the state rules are. But one of the things you're doing in your planning department is like with some of the subdivisions, you're making them oversize the pipes.
Right.
People,
You're going through that.
That's an important part because that allows growth in the community at little or no cost to you as a community.
Right.
And encourage people to, come and to build there because they have some sense of certainty.
Yeah.
And, putting in a 2-inch pipe instead of a 1-inch pipe, is a big thing, actually. When you're talking about development and growth, it's an important part to have, and that shows foresight that you had on the council when they approved that and made that happen. I'm sure there's a lot of developers who hate you for that, but because it's an extra cost to them. Sorry, but but that's the truth. It's going to help Monmouth in the long run that you did that.
Yeah. So our last department I want to hear your thoughts about, we have a senior center, our own senior center in town, so.
It's fantastic. It's good to have a senior center in town. A lot of the communities I've talked to and worked in have said, well, we need something for the kids. We need something for the kids. We need something that the kids can do.
Parks,
the
libraries.
stay in town, like it. And you look at the communities and, you have 30% of the population has kids, and you have 40% population who is 55 or over, and what are they going to do? Again, one of the big issues you have in America today is loneliness, especially in the senior population. Senior men it's extremely high, and I don't know the numbers off the top of my head. I just remember reading some articles about it. To have a place where senior citizens can go and be part of the community and feel like part of the community is extremely important for the mental health. You're going to have less hospital visits. You're going to have less costs to your, fire department because they don't have to do the EMS calls for people who, you do that. Your police services costs are going to go down because you have a senior center where people can go and get the, and if they can't afford, different supplies or, adult undergarments or something like that, they can get them there.
We have those.
And so, it's a big blessing to have it. Not all communities, especially your size, have that opportunity. And so it's a great thing to have that ability to be able to serve that population who is largely underserved.
Right. Yeah. And again, a very fortunate partnership with the university, which has a gerontology department. So we have students who go over and work with the seniors. We have lots of great programming offerings, and our senior group is pretty amazing. They're one of our most active and ambitious volunteer boards and commissions, actually. So we really appreciate that. A couple more questions for you, Steve. Kind of this one I may have some self-service to it, but in your experience, what makes for an effective council, and how do you foster effectiveness in a city council?
The council is most effective when it knows what it wants to accomplish. And what I can do to help facilitate that is help the council get down to what it needs to get, what it wants to, what their vision of the community is. And to make it as solid, because you can have visionaries like, I want everyone in the city to be happy. Okay, well, what does that mean?
It's a great vision.
It's a great vision, but it's like, what does being happy mean?
How do we do that?
And it means something different to everybody. If the council has very good, solid ideas of what they want to accomplish, for example, we have 2 parks that we want that are undeveloped, and we want to develop those parks. And you can sit there and say, okay, we're going to you put out a time frame, we're going to put out contracts where you're going to have a figure like in the next 2 years we'll have developed 1 park and have the planning stages done for another park. Or, so you have something solid that they can actually see. You have, a checklist you can knock off and say, we did this. You have goals and stuff that you can reach, instead of this quasi, I want everyone to be happy view. There's nothing wrong with that. It's just, but for a council or a community to be successful, you have to have solid goals. You have to have solid understanding of what it needs to achieve those goals, and working in that direction with that. And so, if I can provide that to the council, where they can take an idea of everyone to be happy, well, what does happiness mean to you? I want a place to play with my kids.
Yeah.
All right, well, let's talk about parks then.
Great.
Or let's talk about something, it's those type of things that we can get, so you're actually getting down to a solid project you can do.
So speaking about a little bit, one of my favorite quotes is the Margaret Mead about never doubt that a small group of committed, thoughtful citizens can change the world. Indeed, it's the only thing that ever has. So do you have an example of something you've done to really take one of those groups with that vision, bring something to reality?
Well, let's go back to, Drain. When I first got there, they had just shut down the libraries. And so I went to a library board meeting, and they were talking about, what does it mean? What does the library mean? What can we do this? And so, they finally got down to, we would like to have our own library. We'd like to have our own library district. What do we do? And so I was at the meeting, and I'm sitting there saying, well, you really want to do library district? And he goes, yeah. Okay, then you need to do the following things. You need to talk to the county recorder. You need to talk to the assessor. You need to, so I gave them a list of like 20 things they needed to do to get the project going. You need an attorney to write what you're talking about.
Right.
And because setting up a library district is not easy.
Any taxing district, no.
So and then when I would go talk to them when they were getting signatures to get on it and stuff like that. I gave a couple of my books to them they could auction them off or have a spinning wheel. So you sign up, you get a spinning wheel, you get whatever the prize is, and those type of things. So and so when it finally got time to the vote, I was thinking, okay, we'll be lucky if it's like 51 to 49%, and hoping that they would come there. It came back 71% in favor.
Oh my gosh.
And so, again, and where the city helped out again to make it more workable is we located them in a city building, so they didn't have to pay for anything. The city pays water, sewer, electric for them. We pay for the internet for them.
Yeah.
So the only thing they have to concentrate on is making sure their people are paid and bringing in a great collection of books. And so, and that's where you can, again, get 2 groups working together to have something that's really going to affect the community. And if you can get groups of what I like to do, we were talking sort of about this, is if there's an idea in the community, we want to do X, we want to do Y, come talk to me. We can talk about how the city can help.
Yeah.
I had someone else call me that 3 months ago and say, I would really like to do a farmer's market.
Oh, great.
In Drain. And I said, okay, what does that mean to you?
Yeah.
What does it mean, but like, what does a farmer's market mean? Give me a definition and stuff like that. And so we were able to sit there and work and look at things on the computer, give her some names to talk to. And so, for the first time in, 10 years or so, you had actually a farmer's market this year in Drain. And the city said, hey, we'll give you the parking lot to use. And so we won't charge you any rent, we won't charge you anything like this. And so, it's those type of things where if people have an idea or vision they'd like to see happen, then we can come to the city and say, okay, how can you help us make this happen?
Right.
That's the role of the city in my mind. It's not the role of the city to sit there and say, let's put on a show. Let's bring in Pat Benatar to come in and play a concert for us or something like that. Because then it becomes a city thing and not a community thing.
Yeah.
And with small towns, having that sense of community is the biggest blessing you can have within a small town. Having that sense of identity that they're working with us, and the city is a partner to achieve that is what you really want to get.
Yeah, that's great. And in addition to our city itself, we are very closely intertwined with others. Obviously, our sister city of Independence, which shares our school district, our fire district, our chamber. We have other communities in Polk County we work closely with, and then other Mid-Valley partners. So you've mentioned a little bit about your partnership, for example, with the county sheriff's office. Is there another sort of regional partnership or partnership you've been involved in that you feel you contributed to the success, and what was that?
Okay, yeah, it was when I was in Phoenix. We'll talk about a failure, and then I'll talk about how we changed.
Yeah, I love failure.
Success.
I'm good about failure.
The city of Phoenix is served by Rogue Valley Sewer, and they do the service part, the sewer part of Phoenix. And I can't remember the name of the road off the top of my head, but there was one road we were going to do a water project on. And I called them up and say, are you guys going to work on this road anytime soon?
It's not dig it up twice.
They're like, no, we're not going to do that there. So, okay, I'm going to dig it up. And so we dug it up, put it on a new set of asphalt. And then, almost a month later, they were digging in the same spot. And so I'm like, no. And, those are my businesses that you put, they're here. And they were mad at us the first time. Now that we're getting blamed for this one. And so a year later, we were looking at a major project to put in some asphalt on roads and also put in new water lines. And so I called them up and said, hey, listen, we're doing this. Let's
try this again.
I want you to be a part of this with me. And they're saying, like, well, we can't afford it. We didn't put it in the budget for this year. Oh. And I said, what if we pay for it this year and you put it in next year's budget? And when next year comes around, you pay us back.
Yeah.
And they're like, we can do that? I go, yeah, we can do that.
Yeah.
And so it was, very harmonious in the sense that we actually got it done.
Wow.
It saved us money. It saved them money.
Both, yeah.
It worked for everyone involved in it.
Sure.
And the people in the community were only bothered once. With that. So that's kind of, where you work out and you can have those conversations and you develop those relationships. Another one was actually with ODOT.
Everybody's favorite partner.
Well, you see, the trick with working with ODOT is trying to figure out what their issues are.
Right.
When let's go. I'll tell you two stories real quick. In Phoenix, they were putting in a brand new interchange, $72 million interchange,
right.
And there were multiple lawsuits associated with this interchange, to say the least. And so I had been there about 2 weeks, and so I called up Art Anderson, who was the head of ODOT in that area, and said, Art, you have a $72 million project in my community. Can we talk about this? And he said, well, first of all, I'm surprised you called me. I usually have to track you guys down to talk to me. And it's like, yeah, let's sit down. So our city attorney wanted to go with us, so I went with him and met with the ODOT. And they came in, they had all these charts and graphs and everything. I'm like, let's not do that yet.
Right.
Tell me, like you were going to be a 5-year-old, what this project is supposed to do, what the history of this project is. I need to understand the relationship where everything is. Yeah. And so we went through that whole process that afternoon. We got to the point where the lawsuits were associated with it. And so our attorney was arguing with Art and stuff like that. And after about 5 minutes, I go like, okay, I understand what the issues are. We're not going to solve this today. Let's go into something else. And you could just sort of see the shock on, Mr. Anderson's face. Was like, wait a second, you're
Right. Yeah.
And so when I figured out what it is, what their issues were, I was able to suggest, hey, instead of going to court, instead of dealing with this, why don't we try mediation? Let's sit down with a mediator. Because there's a lot of overlap here. There's not a lot of real communication on what the issues are.
Right.
And so that became so anyway, we were able to solve all the lawsuits with the mediation process, and it saved everyone thousands of dollars because we didn't have to do that.
So that touches a little bit on another interesting thing. You have a certificate of alternative dispute resolution from Willamette Law, and that's the Brian Johnston program, I believe. Brian Johnston was a professor, I think.
Yeah,
at
he
Willamette.
was. That was, I think, after my time.
Was it? Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I'm an old man, so I mean, we're talking back in '92 or '93. I don't know if
Yeah.
he was there at that
I
time.
think it was probably after, maybe about after that, but yeah. So how do you use alternative dispute resolution? That's maybe one way you use it in work. How other ways have you found that valuable, maybe even in your personal life?
Well, one thing that really taught me is how to listen to what the issues are, and what to work, what those problems are, and being able to, in some ways, repeat them back to people so you have an understanding of what their thought is and what their concerns are,
Yeah.
and you begin to understand that part of it. It also taught me not to try to jump in and solve problems.
Ah.
I mean, I'm a guy. That's what we do. Should be totally sexist there, so sorry.
No, I'm a big problem solver too. Okay, just get through this. I'm going to solve this. Yeah. It's okay.
A lot of times, what I found is, especially in my personal life, people just need to talk for a while. They don't need you to tell them what to do or what to think or how to approach it. And sometimes you need to phrase it in a way that gets them to think differently. And so you can't go in and solve people's problems. They have to figure out what they are for themselves. And you can help them think about or approach something differently. What the mediation did was, at least in that case with ODOT, was basically tell the council there is, yeah, I know you think you're right, but it's going to cost you $250,000. I'm making up a number. I can't,
Right.
like that direction. It's going to cost you $250,000 to go to court, and the winning in court's 50-50, no matter what
Yeah,
it is.
Right.
And so here you can get what you want. You can, make sure you need it, and your needs are met, and their needs are met. And so by able to listening and hearing and trying to figure out where the overlap is, and then working in that direction. Like the second story I had with ODOT, we were trying to put a flashing crosswalk on Main Street and Drain.
Oh, good. That's a big deal here.
And so with them, I talked to them and I said, hey, this is an issue. So, they had actually just moved some speed signs closer, and the speed going through town was high.
Right.
And I'm like, just come out here. Let's sit down and talk. I'm new, you're new. So we walked out and they're going like, wow, these are people going really quickly through town. And I'm like, yeah, this is what our issue is. And they're going, that guy's not going 25, not even close. It's like, I know, this is what the issue is. And so they said, okay, well, let's put up some cameras and, look at the corners and look at different things that direction. And I said, I would like a flashing crosswalk. And so they're like, okay, they came back and said, okay, you don't have enough walkers, enough people to justify a flashing crosswalk. And I'm like, okay, I find that answer unacceptable. I want you to tell me what we need to do to tell your bosses, because obviously, I mean, in the conversation with them, they were sorry they had to tell me this.
Right.
They wanted the flashing crosswalks. They
Yeah.
understood it. But they're saying you don't hit these numbers.
Yeah.
I was like, okay, what do I need to do to have you change your mind? Or, to make the case for you to do this, or, like that. So they said, well, write us a letter or stuff like that. So instead of just the city writing a letter, I got, the grocery store across the street writing a letter, the church across the street writing a letter. I had like 5 or 6 other people, write a letter saying, hey, we want
We
this.
need this.
And all of a sudden it was like, Steve, can you not have us sending any more letters? We're going to put the crosswalk in. We're going to do this. And the next thing I know is like, okay, we're going to do it in the springtime or in the fall time. And it went out for bid, and we didn't get anybody to bid. And I'm like, well, welcome to Drain.
Oh, yeah.
When you're a small community, 30 miles away from everything, it's hard to come to
Yeah.
get contractors to do things. And so we're working on with them to get more time in it so that we can actually. I go, let's we're talking concrete, so we don't have asphalt, so we don't have to hit the 56 degree minimum.
Right.
Because concrete can
Yeah,
go
you
in
can
any temperature almost.
Put it down a little bit easier.
But if you're talking asphalt, if it's below 56 degrees, it doesn't gel correctly. That's a technical term, I'm sure.
Yeah.
But anyway, that was a conversation that we had, and it's like, okay, if you're okay with this, we're okay with this, and we were able to. But it was developing that communication, and developing that part. Because I'm sure when I got the job in Drain, one of the phone calls, Art Anderson, said, you just got Steve, you got lucky. He works with you. He wants to know what the issues are. He doesn't, and what our needs are.
Right.
And again, because again, we are on Highway 38 in Drain,
Right.
and that's a major truck road
It
to the
is,
coast.
yeah.
And so with ODOT for that road, their main issue is getting truck transportation to the coast because there's
Exactly.
not a lot of places you can really do that
Right.
effectively, quickly, and in
Yeah.
that direction. And so because I understood that's what their issues were, they understood my issues, and it's like, okay, we can work out and do this. And finally, one of the things they said, and what I was really happy with is they said, why don't we make another deal? Because we're doing so great here, let's talk another deal. And I go, okay, what's your deal? He goes, we don't have a place to wash our salt trucks.
Ah,
I go, okay, what are you going to give me if
Right.
let you wash my salt trucks? He goes, well, we need you to, put in flashing speed signs when you're entering into town, and you're going to do that. And they're only charging us, the flashing crosswalk is a $170,000 project.
right.
We're paying 50. They're taking
wow.
up the rest.
Okay.
So, we're almost out of time. Sorry.
That's okay.
So, I mean, a lot of that is that communication, and once you get that communication developed, and listening to what other people say and what their needs are,
Yeah.
again, it's something that people can do. They don't have to go get a special, alternative dispute resolution certificate. But part of it is I wanted to know, are there other ways to solve problems besides going to court? And you should. And after going through the whole process there, my thought is, you should never go to court. You should be able to figure out somehow to deal with it.
Yeah.
And I really like the idea. If you're talking about that, is judges who have the ability to do arbitration.
Yeah.
I think that if you really want to, this is totally off subject and, probably political, and I probably shouldn't say this, but if you really want to change and reform the justice system, begin to have, with some of this stuff, judges who can act as arbitrators and just make the decision. And you're going to speed up a lot of that process in that direction. So anyway, that's more information than you wanted to know, but we'll go from there.
No, never too much information. So I really do appreciate it. We are at time, an opportunity to get to know Steve Dahl, the city administrator of Drain and a candidate for the city manager of Monmouth, as we look forward to developing, growing, and continuing to support all of the dreams of the citizens and residents of Monmouth. So thank you so much, Steve. It was great to get to know you. And tomorrow he will face more of a gauntlet. We have official interviews with several panels, and they'll have an opportunity to maybe go over some of this again, but some different questions as well. But really want to thank you, Steve, so much for joining us today. And we'll step out. We have a couple minutes break here before we start our next interview. And I really want to thank folks for watching, and we'll be right back. Thank you. Welcome if you're just tuning in to the second portion of our interviews today. I am Cec Koontz, Mayor of Monmouth, and my honor today to bring in a couple of folks who the City Council has identified as leading candidates for the position of City Manager to take us into the 2020s. And now I would like to introduce to you Marty Wine. I love somebody who doesn't use their full name because I use Cecilia very rarely. So Marty has been the city manager at the city of Tigard since 2011. Prior to that, she was the assistant chief administrative officer for the city of Renton, Washington for over 5 years. She was a principal associate for Burke and Associates, a public sector consulting firm. And earlier in her career, she served the city of Bellevue, Washington, and also in King County, Washington, in the budget area, another area dear to my heart as a budget analyst. Marty was also a legislative aide in the state of Washington House of Representatives. Marty has a Master's of Public Administration degree from Seattle University, and her bachelor's is actually from Western Washington University. So, Marty, thank you so much for being here with us today.
Thank you very much for your kind welcome.
Really appreciate you being here. So I read your professional background to folks, but what else do we need to know about you?
Oh, that's a really broad question. Let's see, what else do I hope people know about me? One of the things that I guess I would say is that I think this is evidenced by what you just said about me in my introduction. I care a lot about local government. The work that I've done throughout my career has really been focused on how to manage local government well. And so that's the thing that I'm passionate about and that I care about, and it's part of the thing that brings me to be interested in working for Monmouth. So I'm trying to think about other things you might want to know about me.
Well,
Just
where'd you grow
personally.
up?
Yeah.
You stayed in the sort of Western Washington part early in your life?
I grew up in the Pacific Northwest, and my family moved here from the Midwest when I was very young, and I'm one of 3 children. And I grew up in Bellevue, Washington, and my mom was an educator. She was a teacher, and my dad worked for the port. And so I grew up in Bellevue, Washington, and we, throughout that time, let's see, what to talk about regarding that. My dad, in working for the port, had a really great opportunity to serve in Southeast Asia as the marketing director for Port of Seattle, and so we moved to Hong Kong for some part of my childhood. Right, exactly.
Okay,
really,
that's
really cool. Right. We had a great experience. We lived overseas for 4 years when I was young.
Oh my gosh.
And then came back to the Seattle area. And anyways, part of my parents' profession got me interested in working in the public sector. And I also did an internship when I was in high school with the state legislature. It got me interested in policy making and the way the legislature worked. And so anyway, from there, I decided to go to Western Washington University and pursue that interest in politics and in economics, and went to school there. So since then, I've been sort of working all over in Washington, mostly through that consulting work that you saw, doing all kinds of work with local governments, strategic planning and financial planning, and work with communities, work with city councils. And anyway, so I like to think that I'm part of being part of an organization that's, better than I found it after I'm done.
That's great. I also, very much Pacific Northwest girl, as I kind of went the other direction. I grew up in Salem, but I went to college at the University of Puget Sound.
Oh, yes.
So I have my degree in economics from up there, and that's definitely, my parents moved to St. Louis, Missouri. So again, yours started in the Midwest and moved here. Mine moved back to St. Louis when I was in college. And they said, okay, well, now why don't you move to St. Louis? And I said, no. No, I'm a Northwest.
You were liking
girl.
it here?
Oh, yeah. I'm a Northwest girl, so.
That's good. Yes.
Yeah. So what do you know about the history and culture of Monmouth?
Well, let's see. What do I know about the history and culture of Monmouth? Well, I'm not sure if this is something Monmouth wants to be known for or not, but the last dry town in Oregon, right? So I know a little bit about the history in that respect, and that it was founded by Midwestern folks from the Midwest who settled from a Christian organization. So let's see. some of the things I've learned about the culture of Monmouth are recent. I was just talking with Counselor Silbernagel when I was getting ready for our interview here, and learned a little bit about the arts and culture scene here in Monmouth currently, and about the ways that Western Oregon University and the community have, have gathered around performing arts, and I learned a lot about the events that the community puts on. So those are some exciting current, sort of happenings. And I know that that's been very different and challenging in the time of COVID-19 in this year of 2020. But anyway, so I've learned a little bit about the way the community comes together around arts and culture just currently, which is great.
Great, yeah.
It's very fun.
Yeah, that dry town, it is. It's okay. We do consider it a little bit of a point of pride.
Okay.
But I also have to say that we had, the community had chosen to allow the sale of beer and wine around 2000, 2001. And then in 2010, I was the chief petitioner on the ballot measure to allow the sale of hard liquor in
Yes.
town. So people either blame me, right, for that, or thank me for that, and
Yes.
it's a little bit of both, but yeah. And one of our newest businesses is going to be called Dry Town Tap Station. So yeah, it's okay. It's
I
a
heard
point of
about
pride,
that.
Yeah.
So-
Yeah, we the history of the university, both as a Christian college and then as a normal school, right? So our teacher education
Yes.
in the state of Oregon was really centered around this university and this community, with our K-12 system and the university here, and being a teacher preparatory and education community. That's really an important part of our heritage. So,
Yes.
and so why do you see yourself as the next city manager of this community?
I think some of the homework that I've been doing about Monmouth and about some of the, I would say, opportunities that Monmouth has to offer, feel like they could be a good match for what I'm bringing. So the reason that I see myself being part of Monmouth, one, I'm looking for a community that I can be part of, and further to the answer that I gave earlier, I guess I'm interested in becoming part of a community where I can, I'll just call it, leave it better than I found it, and make improvements. And what I've learned so far about Monmouth in terms of your urban renewal district, in terms of your capital improvement program, in terms of the relationship with Western Oregon University, just feels like there's a whole lot of fun opportunities ahead that I'd like to be part of. And one of the things that I think one of the things that you mentioned about my current opportunity is I'm working in the city of Tigard, Oregon. And I've reached a point in Tigard, I've been there 8.5 years.
Yeah.
There's been a lot that's
That's
happened.
a lot for a city manager. I just want to point out to those of us who've been in careers longer that these tenures are usually not this long.
I feel like I'm bringing up the average tenure by staying in Tigard for 8.5 years, and so I feel good about that. And we've achieved a lot. The council and the staff and what's happening in Tigard has been really exciting and fun. And so I'll say all this to bring it around to your original question. I feel like Monmouth has a lot of exciting opportunities ahead in the form of projects that you have underway, development that you want to do, and I'm really interested in being part of. I like being a project manager. I like doing hands-on work and getting stuff done, and from what I see, there's some of that to do here, and so that's part of something that I'd like to be part of.
So, and it doesn't come with a staff of 50 or
Absolutely,
60
I do.
people. Right?
Yes, I do.
I'm sure that's a question for a lot of folks. Why would you leave a large city like Tigard
Yeah.
and find some challenges and some opportunities here?
Well, I mean, despite what you might think about Tigard and staffing or the size of the city of Tigard or relative to Monmouth, I'm a working manager, and so in terms of doing work and doing project management, that's something I really like to do.
Yeah.
And so, in some ways, I feel like it's more impactful to be working for a community. I mean, how do I say this? If there's plenty to do, you can really dig in and get to work. And so I think that's going to be a point of contrast. And anyway, so it seems like it would be very interesting to work for a smaller community.
We're glad to hear that. And another way, you talk about being involved in the community, and obviously that is kind of an expectation of many of our staff. And I noticed that in your time, you have been involved with, say, the Rotary. You were involved with Rotary. And so I'd like to know, first of all, the stereotype is that's the old retired guys club. And so thank you for breaking that up a little bit. What do you think you've gotten from Rotary? And what would you say to others about the value of joining one of the service clubs we have in our community?
Well, this is going to sound like kind of an obvious answer, but it's called a service club for a reason. So one of the things that I feel like I benefited the most from in being part of Rotary is what that organization gives to the community and the care that it shows in whatever way. Every Rotary Club does something a little bit different in terms of what they contribute to the community, and that's designed based on what the community needs. So I say that to say it can be incredibly rewarding to design the way that you can give back to your community, and that all happens right there from the heart in your place. And so that's something I've gotten out of Rotary, is being the spirit together of working with with a group of people who care a lot to design a way that they can make their community better. That's something that I've really, the camaraderie and the rewarding part of working with the service club has been really great.
Yeah.
And also the wonky finance person in me. I was willing to be part of our foundation board, and I was willing to be part of strategic planning efforts in the Rotary Club, and so I appreciate them having me join and be part of that.
So I was going to say, because this is my experience, I've been on a lot of different boards of organizations, particularly I'm very involved in the arts. I've been involved in a community theater that has been in Salem for 65 years, and all kinds of organizations. And I'm always the treasurer, right? Because once
Somebody figured you out, I
you're
think.
in finance for a career, you're the treasurer. I serve on the board of trustees of Western Oregon University, and I'm the chair of the finance committee. So I imagine you've had some of that same experience.
A bit. Although I sometimes try to do something that my niece has also done. She plays soccer, and she's a goalkeeper. And at one point she told her coach she didn't want to be the goalkeeper anymore, and she wanted to play another position. So sometimes I just ask to play another position, that's, it's a good way to break out and show folks that you have other skills and things that you can bring.
That's what, I also have done some consulting. My consulting was almost all in local small communities around Oregon particularly, and with nonprofits. And I always tell them, you think, oh my gosh, we need we need more marketing expertise. Let's go hire this person. They're really good in marketing. And the first thing you need to ask them is, do you want to do the marketing? Because not all of us do.
Yeah.
Sometimes we do enjoy something else. So,
Yes.
Yeah. So Monmouth has the way our city is set up, we have about 7 or 8 departments. And I want to just kind of mention those to you and hear a little bit about what you think of those, what your experience is in those areas. Many of our departments actually have a volunteer board or commission who support their work. And in a couple of cases, we have a nonprofit 501c3 that supports the work of the department. So we have a lot of volunteers and folks who are so heavily invested in the work that the city does that things we couldn't accomplish without them. So I want to hear a little bit about your thoughts about that.
Sure.
So, first of all, our fabulous library.
Okay, so I have the benefit of being part of, in Washington County, Tigard Public Library is part of the Washington County Cooperative Library System, which is a partnership between the cities and the county to provide library services. So libraries are amazing, and the reason libraries are amazing is because they're I know even though it's 2020 and we're having challenges with gathering, they're the gathering place for the community. And we also have an amazing committed group of people who work in the library, and also we could not make our library run without our volunteers. So I want to say we might be fifth. I'm gonna not remember this accurately. We might be the fifth largest library out of 13 that are in the cooperative.
Oh.
And so, and we have a very cooperative way of working together. So, anyway, library services, we have the benefit of amazing staff who care a lot about patrons. We've got a super active patron base and library board and set of volunteers who keep our library running. And so, when I worked at the City of Renton, we also were part of, the King County Library System is a very large library district that covers almost all of the King County region. And Renton was one of the two cities that had its own two independent libraries when I first started working there. While I was there, we transitioned to, with a vote of the people, to join the King County Library System. But up until that time, we were running our own independent two-branch library. Well, the library is very famous because it's built over the Cedar River in Renton.
right, yeah.
And so it's a very beautiful setting, but it's got its own facility challenges. Anyway, all that to say, another thing about libraries that I really care about is the access that libraries provide to the community, and they're not just about books anymore, right? I mean,
We have a seed lending program, but you can't lend seeds, right?
Right.
So, but, yeah. And
hopefully the benefits get spread all over the community, right? Yeah.
And actually, something we could still do during this time, right?
Yes.
For so long when we couldn't provide any library
Yeah.
service, and now we're at curbside library service and concierge library service, where you can actually just sort of call in and say, these are the kind of books I like, and
I'm so proud of our library staff for the same reason. They, our staff in Tigard have implemented curbside service, including a service desk, so that if I were to drive
Wow.
up and say, I'm really interested in mysteries, can you tell me whatever's new on the shelf related to whatever?
Right.
And they'll go in and retrieve the book or the materials or whatever it is and bring it to you. And they've been working incredibly hard to make that happen. I also noticed on my tour that the library in Monmouth has put together the interpretive trail elements where people can, read along.
over in Madrona Park,
as they're
we
walking.
have some walking books for
Yes.
students, for
Yeah.
youth, yeah.
Anyway, those were random thoughts about libraries,
Yeah,
but
that's good. This is kind of random. That's
Yep,
okay.
that's okay.
Because the next one, not nearly so sexy. Public Works.
Our leadership team in Tigard, I don't think it's a joke, but we say to each other that, that Public Works is it's the underappreciated and unseen things that make everything in your house go, right? It's the pipes, and sometimes it's the green infrastructure too. It includes your trails and your trees and but water, sewer, and streets and everything that a city does that it's the infrastructure that keeps your community together. So what do I think about Public Works? We have tried through, I'm just going to relate a Tigard experience again. We put a strategic plan for the city in place soon after I joined. It was a couple of years in. And the vision for the city is to become the most walkable community in the Pacific Northwest. And it's also got an aspect of it that's about where people of all ages and communities can lead healthy and healthy lives. And so one of the aspects of that is your healthy life depends on the infrastructure that your Public Works department provides. And in Monmouth's case, that includes power and light, right? And
That's a separate department, but yeah,
understood.
absolutely.
Yes. It's it's the infrastructure
Right.
that makes your community go.
Yeah.
And so we've been trying to pay better attention to the maintenance of those systems, because even though you don't see them, the goal is to try to make sure that they stay healthy and that they're kept up in a way that that the system can be healthy for the long term.
So I like that, right? Because our internal health, but also the health of infrastructure.
Exactly.
That we have, again, not sexy, very difficult conversations about how to fund those services, water, sewer, stormwater is one we're going through right now.
Yes.
But that is, and thinking of that as providing the health of the community, I think is really important. I had another question for you just about that. You mentioned the walkable city, the most walkable
Yes.
community in the Pacific Northwest. And maybe this ties back to our other departments, but I read that you also, that's not just about sidewalks, right?
True.
That you have built an entire piece about education and how lots of different things you've tied to that vision. And I was really interested in hearing more about that.
Thanks for asking about that. I forgot one of the words that's in the vision, and it's a really important one, and it's interconnected. So one of the things that one of the objectives in the strategic plan was about anybody in the city being able to live within it's, 15 or 20-minute walk or 3/8 of a mile of a trailhead, and that the way the walkable identity, and if you know anything about Tigard, you wouldn't naturally think of it as the most walkable place, right?
Yeah.
It's absolutely not.
We all drive 217.
Especially when you drive through it.
We all
Exactly.
drive 99. Yeah, we get it, yeah.
Yes. But the idea is that even if you're living in a neighborhood in Tigard or you're coming through, and because Tigard is also, bordered by Beaverton and Tualatin and Portland, and if you were on a regional trail network, you would be able to access that from anywhere in the city and be able to, walking is a universal activity. So the idea is that health is connected to that too. It's not just about being able to literally walk as a pedestrian, but also to cycle or to roll or to do whatever it is that you need to do. You're getting around in some way that's not just a motorized vehicle. So yes, the idea of being interconnected on a network of trails and being able to access the city by something other than a car, while that's still an opportunity, it's meant to be a healthy alternative.
Yeah.
And I think that the goal was to show that there were a lot of benefits that could come from even taking baby steps toward that vision. I think we realized how ambitious it was when we named it.
Right.
It's not something that you just do in 5 years.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So back to our departments, need to hear a little bit about police and policing.
Sure.
Because we do have our own department here.
Understood. Boy, it's a challenging time to be in the business of policing right now. I think that 2020 has been particularly challenging. Let's see, what about police services? I think that we've had, I don't want to just relate Tigard experiences because I also personally, I'm part of a household where my partner is a retired law enforcement officer. So we've been talking a lot about what it means to protect the community and what kind of a role the police department has to do that. And also what difficult balance it is right now to strike when there's so much being asked of our police department, and not just in terms of keeping people safe and not just in terms of calls for service and being there when somebody calls 911. It's also we have in our community in Tigard, we have the intersection with all kinds of behavioral health issues, folks who are houseless, people who are living outside, and or folks who need other kinds of help, and asking folks who are highly trained to be able to provide safety in neighborhoods and safety when they call for help. It's asking a lot more of them to also be, social workers and to be, supportive of people who need all kinds of needs. So, I guess all I would say about that is we have an amazing, our police department, we were we're fortunate this year to bring to our voters a levy for police services in May of 2020, and in Tigard, our voters supported it and voted yes, which was terrific, and we were very grateful. And the idea was to enhance patrol services so that there was coverage in all of our patrol districts, in all 5 districts all day. And so I think that what we've been trying to do is focus on what the core function of the police department is, but it's not easy right now to be. I think our police chief has also been enormously supportive and sensitive to calls in our community for racial equity that have come along with a very challenging year, and those have been really important dialogues that I think need to happen. And also, our council is embarking on convening yesterday it was called the Transformation Commission, but today it's being called, so what is it being called? It's called the Public Safety Advisory Board. But the idea is it will be empaneling community members in Tigard to have a dialogue about many aspects of police services and what it is that the police do and understand their practices. And so if there are questions about the way they work, both to raise community understanding, and then also I think in our police department, there are also folks that have been working in the police department who are hearing from the community that there's some scrutiny of the work that they're doing, even if the actual actions of what's happening in our community aren't the same as what's happening in Minnesota or in places where there have been police shootings. But anyway, there's a bunch of understanding that needs to happen.
Yeah.
And our police department is all of our departments are right on the forefront of those conversations.
Right. Yeah, and here too, our officers all live either in town or certainly not very far away, and so having those very important conversations with your neighbors, different than appearing before a commission and speaking to people that you only know when they're in uniform. So
right.
It's I agree, challenging times and great opportunities for us to work as a community and appreciate what our police face nowadays. I work in the school system. I know what school teachers do that they were never particularly expected to do or trained to do well, and the kinds of work we are doing dealing with people in trauma and here at the university. So lots of challenges there.
It's true.
So Power and Light, as you say, we was something not unique in Oregon or anywhere, but certainly something that is not everyone has, and that is our Power and Light department. And just wondering what you see for that for us and how important that could be to our community.
Much as we were just saying as we started our interview here today, this kind of a service where MyNet and having a TV station and the ability to be able to connect with the community on TV, and then likewise with Power and Light, the ability to be able to bring electric service, to customers and to be able to serve the community you're right. I guess the only thing I would say is I'm going to echo what you just said, which is it's unique in terms of what a city can provide. And when a city can do it really well, it provides a really important and essential connection that everybody needs. And so, I'm imagining, but you can probably tell me more about this, that probably what people care about is also that it's affordable, and that it's in line with what's happening in the market, and that it's safe. Okay. I was really impressed on my tour today to find out about the move of Power and Light to a new location and the opportunities to be able to leverage some, housing and opportunities to, for people to live as those moves took place. Yeah. I don't know all the details about what happened with, I'm looking at your expression and thinking,
she got Chuck Thurman. Chuck Thurman gave her the tour, so you got all the information about Power and Light.
I was grateful for the tour. It was a really great opportunity to learn more about Monmouth.
It is an economic asset that we maybe have not particularly leveraged as much as we could. But I also telling on that department a little bit, right? So the idea, because being in the metro area, you don't have this, a contractor cut through a power line, and actually it was serviced a neighborhood, and I think they said it was about 50 minutes before they had them out there, had the line completely repaired, and they were completely restored to service, which in work from home days is pretty critical. And and I will tell also on Chuck, our Power and Light superintendent, that I got a call at one evening from a citizen who had had their power shut off, and they had tried to make a payment, and they tried to make the payment online, didn't realize it would take effect, and they called the mayor. So I said, gosh, I don't know if we can do anything about this, but, just let me see, or at least find out what the process is for you. So contacted Chuck and said, can you at least tell me what the process is for them? So they were very nice about the whole thing. They knew it was their fault. Yeah, I got a text from Chuck. Oh, yeah, I'm in town. What's their address? So I can't say that'll always work, but that opportunity for that really personal service and for being able to take care of those things, knowing that if we are ever in a large emergency, we're going to have people right here in the community responding
Yeah.
and caring about what's going on in this town. So I think it's a great opportunity for economic development as well as just really creating
Yes.
that. Another department, community development.
Community development. So another thing I was impressed about on the tour today is the extent of growth in Monmouth. I really wasn't, I don't know that I was aware of how much Monmouth is growing in between Monmouth and Independence and what's
Right.
happening in
Both cities,
in
yeah.
both cities. It's pretty exciting.
Unless you work for the school district, in which case it's a little bit of panic that moves.
Well,
in.
there's that, right? Yeah. I think, one of the things that I probably should just say at the outset, I work with an amazing team of people in Tigard. Our leadership team and the department directors really do amazing work. And one of the ways that our leadership team in Tigard talks about community development is with a lowercase c and a lowercase d, because community development is not just about new houses that are being built, and it's not just about the mixed use the mixed use project that can happen on the corner on Main Street.
Okay.
It's also about building neighborhoods and building connections with people. And in community development, the embrace of the strategic plan in Tigard has been really exciting because they are also the idea about making neighborhoods walkable and the idea about making walking connections happen, not just with sidewalks, but with trails and with just access to being able to walk is something that those values have been instilled in the way we interpret our code and the way we issue permits. And so I think about community development differently as not just the permit counter and not just the planners and not just the building department. And those folks provide really essential functions because it also, whatever's going up above the ground is going to be safe, right? And that's one of the basic things that they do.
Right.
But community development does so much more.
Yeah, especially here when our community development director was also the liaison to the Parks and Rec Department, to Commission, and the Historic Commission, and the tree board, and so, it's pretty all-consuming sometimes.
Right.
But really having that opportunity to, like you say, take whatever your vision is and put it apply all the laws, all the rules, and all the things you have to do, but in your own way.
Yeah,
So,
and and thinking holistically, so that, I think I'm not sure whoever coined the phrase about beginning with the end in mind, but understanding what you want to see at the end and working toward it. And I think that's one of the most important. That's one of the most important ways that when you have a development code and when you have design review and you have all these, wonky,
Seems really dry,
regulatory
right?
things that nobody really wants to go through. It's like, well, that's really the point of it, is that
Yeah.
you get to see growth happen in the way that you wish for it.
Yeah, that's great. And last but not least, because these volunteers, particularly in this organization, are very dear to my heart, and that's our senior center.
Yes. So I'm part of a community now that has we built our senior center using community development block grant funds long ago. And so our senior center, much as I am hearing about in Monmouth, is the hub of our community. Our Meals on Wheels folks operate in the facility, and a whole bunch of classes, not just put on by that organization, but by our community college and everybody else, happen at the center. So anytime a city can be part of creating a gathering place, it's just, and especially, connections for seniors is just, it's really an important place. And I've heard about Monmouth Senior Center that it's like got the highest, attendance rate of anywhere in the region or something like that. It was a statistic that was really impressive, and so it sounds like there's quite a draw about what happens at the senior center.
What's interesting is our senior center, really, Independence didn't have one. Dallas has had a sort of a small facility, and they're working on expanding theirs, but we really did. Our membership came from all over the county and has been a draw. But interestingly enough, our seniors and the senior advisory board and our friends of the senior center had a great vision for some expansion of the facility. And we went through the steps, and the first place you go, community development block grants, very commonly used, right? And that group was told that if in fact they chose that path for funding, that it could only be used by seniors. That it had to be used for that purpose only. And they chose not to, because it is also rented out for other uses. It is a community facility. They wanted to be able to open it up. And so it took them about another 15 years, is that what it took us, to get that expansion done? They raised money by pancake feeds. They raised money by selling arts and crafts. Pancakes. But it was a source of pride that would actually be a whole community space.
That's a very considerate way of thinking about a gathering space.
Yeah.
So, and even if it means making more pancakes.
And they're really good. And that's one thing COVID has really hurt. The monthly senior center breakfast, best $6 breakfast you've ever had.
Everybody's missing the
and
breakfast.
Great opportunity for those volunteers. So obviously, Marty, we are pretty proud to be the home of the oldest public university in Oregon. And so you talked a little bit about what you know about how the college interacts with the community, but what else do you see as the value of being a college town?
So one of the things that I've been thinking about since I applied for the job of city manager in Monmouth is about what, in my world, the town-gown relationship, right? I think that one of the benefits of being a college town is about I'll define this in a minute, but the diversity that a university brings to the city as a whole. And I mean age, I mean race, I mean in every dimension. And I think that it materially changes the character of a community to be able to be part of, to have that kind of partnership. I would say too that I mentioned earlier, like the studio we're sitting in, and the ways that a university and a city can share facilities, make resources available to the community is, I think, enriched by having them both there. So I've been trying to learn more about the ways the city and the university partner together. I'm interested in learning more about that. And anyway, everything that I learned on, again, the tour today was really eye-opening in that respect, just because I got to see, I got a window into how proud the university is also to appreciate the city. And so, anyway, that's been, I'm still learning. Maybe you can answer that question from your perspective.
No, that's great. I mean, it's funny because we've had conversations about, are we a town with a college or are we a college town? And certainly having our businesses be in some ways very dependent on university traffic. We have a motel in town and a B&B, and they were usually filled with parents and visiting professors or teams or all those things, and those things have gone. It was a very difficult week for us in June when we didn't have commencement, when we didn't have hundreds and hundreds of people and families. We're looking at a very different fall as well. So that vibrancy and diversity, and I totally agree with you, that for a small town, the opportunity to learn about different cultures, I was pretty excited to get to do a welcome for Chinese New Year when the students here celebrated that. And really that opportunity to learn. Also, Western is one of the most Oregon of Oregon schools and is working towards becoming an Hispanic serving institution. So
Yeah.
celebrating and honoring those students, most of whom are first generation, and knowing that when families choose to send their child off to college for the first time, to get to welcome them here is another really special aspect, I think, of our university and our communities. So, of course, one of our other big partnerships is our sister city of Independence that we share the school district with, our Chamber of Commerce. We have a joint fire district. So partnerships are pretty important to us. We also have not only the other cities in Polk County, but we are part of the Mid-Willamette Valley region for most things, Marion, Polk, Yamhill counties. You come from Metro. Obviously. So,
Yes, I do.
Can you describe a successful partnership that you were a part of, and really maybe even how you personally contributed to the success of something like that?
Let's see, partnerships. I'm trying to think of a just right example. But one of the things that I've really appreciated about being part of Washington County, actually on my drive down this afternoon to get ready for coming to talk with you today, I was part of a monthly call that happens among all of the cities and also all of the special districts and the county. And every month, the city managers and the county managers and the district managers get together, and that's been even more so really helpful during COVID-19 to both share information and to stay coordinated. So I would say that just being a representative of one of those cities in Washington County and being part of a connected network of managers who share information has been one of the most rewarding parts of being, I mean, you can say that we're part of Metro, but Metro is really big, and there's a lot of 3 counties and a lot of cities, and maybe most people in Oregon would prefer to not even
Think about
that.
yeah.
But I would just say that my work in partnership with our surrounding cities and also with Washington County has been incredibly rewarding. And by that, I mean, we partner together. I'm on the board of our dispatch agency, so Washington County Coordinated Communications Agency, which is much as like the Washington County, the library cooperative. We work together on EMS services. So there are some opportunities for the cities to be able to share resources through an intergovernmental agreement, but also sit all together on boards where we're talking about the service and figuring out how to best serve all the parties involved. So, I mean, that's been a near-term and really rewarding opportunity to be where we're bringing what we have in terms of our city resources and our, staff time and everything else as a partner. So that's been really rewarding. One of the things that I did when I worked for the city of Renton that I really appreciated, one of my jobs when I was hired there as Assistant Chief Administrative Officer was to help the city bring into the city through annexation 3 large developed unincorporated areas that totaled almost 100,000 people. 3 separate areas, and my job was to help to coordinate the planning. And by planning, I mean, like, how would the area be annexed in and grow and all of that. But one of the other things that was my responsibility, also outreach to the folks who were in those unincorporated areas who might not necessarily want to be part of the city.
About that.
Weren't so interested in being part of the city. And then in addition, it was my job to be the liaison with the special districts, fire districts most of all, but also some of the other governments, there's in Washington, there's a plethora of utility
PDs
districts,
and,
exactly. And I would say that one of the things I was proudest of in that work is the partnerships that I forged, not just sitting in the city seat and working with the person sitting in the fire district seat, but really about building relationships so that at any time you could pick up the phone and you could call and say, hey, we've got this thing going on and we need to work on it together, or what's the way through this problem that's presented itself to us. So I'm a person who cares a lot about building relationships, and I believe that you build trust by working together. And so one of the hallmarks of, as I said, one of the things I'm proudest of related to those partnerships is that We were able to build those relationships in a way that they've now moved well beyond it with the fire authority in Washington, but the city was able to build relationships with the fire districts in ways that when annexation happened, the transition of services and the way that the unions got along and the way that fire services was and emergency services was provided was seamless.
Yeah.
And a lot of that really had to do with the relationships that we built together.
That's great.
So.
Yeah. So Polk County, we have our managers and districts, our Polk County breakfast that is at 7 o'clock in the morning, right? Just so you know.
Great.
we
If you're a morning
business, we
person.
get business done at 7, but you're absolutely right. It's having those opportunities. We are served by a couple of rural fire districts here, and when I go to the meetings and I'm wearing the different hats, the director of finance and operations for the school district, but also the mayor, being able to just say, hey, here's an opportunity. And in this community, our fire district that serves the two cities, we start talking about how do we serve rural students and get reliable internet access, right, for distance learning. And the superintendent and I are sitting in a meeting with the fire chief, and he says, well, we have rural fire district buildings. Do you want to bring the hotspots out there? And then, we can work that out. So we absolutely, because you're sitting in the room together and you're
Yeah.
already talking. And
That's a
it's
great
huge.
example.
And
Yeah.
we sort of, in Washington County, you've got Tigard Beaverton. You also have North Plains
And Cornelius.
and Cornelius, right?
Right.
So same here. We have West Salem. West Salem is in Polk County.
Yes.
And then you've got little old Monmouth and Independence and Dallas and Falls City. So those kind of interesting interplays about where can you support each other? Because you'd be surprised sometimes what we can help the big cities with.
Yes.
So I'm sure you've learned
That's
some
a
of
great
that
example. Yeah.
working with those guys, yeah. So in your experience, Marty, what makes for an effective council? And what do you do to foster that effectiveness?
Effective council. So, being a city manager is a really interesting job because I view the role of city manager as the bridge between the folks who are the elected representatives of the community and serving to make sure, both from an oversight perspective and also from a community service perspective, that the folks who elected them are getting everything that they want and hope for. And the city manager is the bridge between those folks and the folks who are meant to carry out operations and the ones who need to, help people keep their power on and issue permits and, lend library materials and all of that. So one of the challenges of being a city manager is respecting all of those roles, making sure that folks feel like they are getting done what they want to get done in those roles. And one of the things that I found helpful when I first started in Tigard was to talk to the folks who were serving on the council then and ask them, both individually and as a council as a whole, what they wanted to achieve and what would help them to be successful. And as you can imagine, that's probably different for an individual than it is for, in your case, the 7 of you who are serving. So in the role of the city manager, it's really important to understand those things so that you can help the council achieve those things that they want to try to be successful, and to be the person who brings the support and brings the relationship building. And in some cases, if the mayor is wanting this, helping with the relationship building that's on the council, because the more effective a council can be in knowing how you all want to make decisions, the better. I think that's a sign of effectiveness, is knowing the way you make decisions, knowing actually having a vision and knowing that you want to carry it out. That makes for an effective council. I think the most powerful, effective councils are the ones who are pulling in the same direction. It's and less so when everybody's got a different idea about what they want to get done.
Yeah.
So those are two things. I mean, I would say one of the things that I've also tried to do in my service as a city manager in Tigard is to connect individually with everybody on the council, which I try to do every month and check in about how things are going, how I'm doing, how they feel like the council is doing, how I can be helpful in helping them get done what they want to do.
Great.
So those are some things.
So speaking of that, getting people to realize these dreams, one of my favorite quotes is the Margaret Mead, "Never doubt that a small group of committed, thoughtful citizens can change the world. Indeed, it's the only thing that ever has." So do you have a good example of how you helped a small group really just achieve their dream or vision?
That's a great question. You know, I'm gonna choose a personal example. When I was, I'm gonna give away my age. I'm on TV.
Okay, you don't have to do
No,
that.
I'm just kidding. I'm gonna rewind about 20 years, and I was working in the King County Budget Office at the time, and there were a couple of us who just for wanting to be fit, wanting to be more active, decided that we wanted to start a women's recreational soccer team, and didn't have the first idea how we were going to do that. And we also, weren't really sure where to plug in. And I guess an example I would give is that I and two other women, got together in a gym. It was in February, and I remember because we had to go inside because it was, we were playing at night in February in the Northwest, so of course it was raining sideways, and it was 30 degrees, and it was, anyway. So we had a dream to put together a women's recreational soccer team, and we did do that. And it was that team ended up being together, and we also didn't have the first idea. We kind of liked soccer, and we kind of knew that we were supposed to run. And I hadn't played soccer since I was about 15, and so we were like, we don't even know what we're doing.
What are our drills?
Where's the rest of our team going to come from? We don't even know what. And we ended up having a team that lasted together for probably 15 years.
Oh my gosh.
And so, in terms of like a dream, it was a connection between people and something that we were trying to achieve that we just kept embarking on season after season together. And the way it started was sort of funny, but it really ended up being, again, one of the greatest connections that I was able to make. And it wasn't any amazing feat that we had to overcome, except that, besides that we didn't know what we were doing.
Right.
Anyway, that was so that was something that was just personally a really rewarding time and effort that I was part of.
That's great. One other thing, and just have a few more minutes here, but you have one of your volunteer efforts was serving as a youth mentor, and you talk about how you really like mentoring and developing people. And so, can you talk to me about a mentor in your life?
Oh, absolutely. I'm going to say something more broadly about mentoring, just generally. I think that mentoring can take many forms, and sometimes it's very subtle and looks like advice, and sometimes you can build deep relationships where somebody and also through friendships where mentoring can really advance and support a person. And so anyway, I've realized my definition of mentorship has broadened a lot over my life.
Yeah.
Right, sure. So one of my mentors is Jay Covington, is legendary in the city manager world in the state of Washington because he just recently retired as the chief administrative officer of the city of Renton, and he was my boss when I was in the city of Renton, and I learned a lot about city management from him. And he just had a really amazing coaching style where he'd have you basically do work alongside him.
Oh, wow.
And by the time you were done working with him, you were the one doing the work, and which if you think about it, is a really crafty way of
very
having
smart.
somebody else
Very
do
good
the work.
Yeah.
But it's also a great way to learn, and he was very supportive. And Jay is a person who served through 4 elected mayors, a strong mayor city, and mayors with very different styles and very different ways of, when you're a city administrator, you're doing a dance where you know, the department directors don't necessarily report to you, and the mayor is the one who's administratively in charge of the city. So you're really.
That's not happening here. We
I understand.
point out, right?
I understand that's not the way that
big city
Monmouth
thing.
works, right? Exactly. But
Or even Tigard.
I learned so much from Jay, including that bridge role, and also how. And also, one of the things I also learned from Jay is that the best way to be a mentor is to understand what makes somebody tick. Like, understand what it is they're aiming for. You know, take the time to learn from somebody what they're aiming for, and then learn about how they learn, and learn about, you know, what can help make them be successful.
Yeah.
And so, and investing in that, and that's as individual as a person is.
It is, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
Very difficult. So one last quick
Sure.
question. So I say that my hobby, especially lately, is going to meetings. And you seem to also have a hobby of going to a lot of meetings. But what else are your pastimes or your passion times?
Pastimes and passions. So, yeah, I think I mean, I don't know if I would choose going to meetings as my favorite.
Yeah.
That feels like kind of like that's sort of a
It's-
sidelight
it's
that
an-
just
it's a
comes
weird
along
hobby,
with it, right?
Yeah.
Let's see, some things that I really like to do personally. When I moved to Oregon, I discovered what an amazing, you know, wine tasting experience you can have anywhere in the Willamette Valley, and so that's something that's been really interesting and fun to discover while I've been here in Oregon. I mentioned soccer is, you know, an interest, and I don't play anymore, but I'd like to. I'd like to try. I'm a quilter, so I'm somebody who likes design, and my sister and my mom and my aunt are all quilters, and so in my family, it's something that we really like to do. I'm also I love to travel and I'm interested in making an avocation out of something about food, because I love to cook and I love food. So
Great.
anyway, those are some of the things that when I'm not going to meetings, I find interesting and fun. So.
Well, good, because we have a lot to offer here in those regards, so we can hook you up with some pretty fantastic quilters and fabric
Great.
artists. That's some people in my neighborhood actually have a fabric arts group that they
Wow.
get together and just create and do things, so. Well, thank you so much, Marty, and really appreciate your time coming down here. Tomorrow, you'll be meeting another group of folks, our department heads, as well as meeting the rest of our city council and some of our community partners and leaders who will get a chance to find out a little bit more about you and give you an opportunity to figure out how we can move Monmouth forward, because, as you say, I think a lot of great things going on here, and I appreciate getting to know you a little bit better. Wish we were actually out here on the grounds. There's a beautiful historic home. We would have had wine and an opportunity to meet some of our really wonderful people in our community, but appreciate this sort of untypical effort and way to do this. But thanks for joining us, Marty Wine, from currently Tigard, and appreciate everybody tuning in. I really, again, want to thank Western Oregon University, WouTV, Deborah Rozelle, and our amazing sign language interpreters here to help share a little bit more about Monmouth and how we see moving forward. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Mayor.